Hello, curious minds. Welcome to Mentorless Podcast, a show where I have in-depth conversation with visual storytellers about one particular project they completed. Together, we look at the creative and tactical steps they took from having an idea to releasing their finished project into the world. I'm your host, Nathalie. In this episode, I talked with Wil and Sara Magness about The Manual, a medium-length sci-fi film they recently completed and is now going through the festival circuit. With Wil and Sara, I tackle an aspect of filmmaking in the 21st century that has not been covered yet: short film distribution and creating for the long game. The mistakes many indie filmmakers often make is to pour all their energy in making their film and afterwards, crickets. They have no more juice to push the film, and this can lead to strong heartbreaks. In this episode, you will hear a different story. Wil and Sara came up with original and inspiring ways to make sure the manual will get its best shot out there. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation as much as I did, and I'll see you on the other side of this audio track. Wil and Sara, thank you very much for being with me on the Mentorless podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
So you contacted me a couple of months ago, I would say, to tell me about your latest project that is named The Manual. And one of its particularities is that it's a medium-length film.
That's right.
I think what I would like to start with, you are a couple and you've worked together on this project. Was it the first project you worked together on, or did you do something before that?
Well, no, this is not our first project. This is, I guess it's kind of like our fourth project together. We met when I had moved back to Florida for a little while, and was interested in pursuing some filmmaking, and a friend of mine introduced me to Wil as a videographer, and we started sort of pairing with each other, helping out each other on each other's film projects, and that was fantastic. And we basically worked together for about a year and a half, and then we decided that we were in love. Then we moved to Portland, and it took a while for us to meet enough people to get a new project going. But this is our first project after having been in Portland for like 7 years now.
Okay. And you're both working in the film industry in a way, but not the fiction part of it, probably more the commercial part of it?
Yeah, we're doing commercial production. I work for a brand agency here, and Sara works for a digital agency.
Yeah, so I'm not doing video as much anymore, but I was working in post-production for at a commercial and agency here in Portland.
One of the first things I want to start with is, Wil, when did you have the idea for the manual? Like, can you tell us how long ago did you have the idea for the manual, and how did it present itself? Was it from the get-go a fiction, a feature, a short? If you can explain us the process a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah, of course. The way it started was I'm a huge fan of science fiction in general, and I knew I wanted to tell just a science fiction story, and so that was the inkling of it. And I think I first had the idea about 4 years ago, and it was initially going to be an animation about a child raised on a spaceship. And so that was the basic dynamic of a child that's raised entirely by an artificial intelligence. And the idea, as I started working on it and making it something that was a bit more personal, it kept evolving as aspects of my own experiences and my life sort of seeped into it. It became a very different story, and finally something that didn't seem right for animation anymore, and could be better told as with real people.
How far in the process of developing it as an animation did you realize that? Did you have any experience in animation, or did you just thought it was going to be an animation, started writing the screenplay, and while writing realized it was going to be a fiction? Or when did that pivot happen?
I do have some experience in animation. I do most of my experience is in post-production. So the way I made it into the commercial industry was through editing. I have a lot of experience editing, and then I started directing. As sort of a jack of all trades post-production person, I know how to do animation in After Effects, and basically I developed the animation. I had the script fully finished and had gone through probably 4 different rounds of revisions on it, and I had all of the puppets created for the characters, and had animated out a couple of scenes. And let's see, I guess 2 years ago is when one of the revisions led to a completely different story almost. It became unrecognizable except for the one main character. So I'd say that happened like 2 years ago.
And it seems like when Wil was working on the animation part of it, like there wasn't much help I could provide him with that because that's not my forte. And it was sort of moving really slowly and you were sort of frustrated, it seemed like, because, with big animation films, there's usually like hundreds of people working on them. But the moment that you made the decision to make it a live action, it was like things really swung into gear and we started moving forward really quickly.
I'm quite intrigued, actually. I just want to stay a little bit longer with that phase because 2 years is a long time. And I just want to get this right. For these 2 years, you were on your own. I'm guessing, Sarah, of course, you were following the process, but as you said, maybe just as a support system more than as an active member of the crew, let's say?
Yeah, that's right.
So, Wil, you were working full-time and during nights and weekends, you were just developing the project on your own?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, probably not as dedicated as I would want to be working on it, but whenever I had time, And I did get it to the point where I made a full animatic where I had drawn out, all the different shots I wanted, and it flowed through a full like 20 minutes.
And part of that was like during the time when we lived in Portland and we didn't like have the community and we didn't have people in the film community that we could turn to for support.
That's probably the biggest reason why we wanted to do an animation, because I felt like it was something I could do without anybody else.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the great power of animation is that you can work on your own if you don't have people. So what I'm very curious about right now is that it was not working for you as an animation and you had an aha moment where you decided to make it a live action. Was it partially linked to the fact that you guys started meeting with people to make this movie happen or not at all? And the other question is there something, like, do you remember specifically a reason that, like, a piece of the puzzle that came into play and made it clear, or is just an instinct that drove you to continue on the, to take the story to the next genre, let's say?
Right. Well, I think a big part of it was when I professionally moved from just being an editor to directing as well. I started to meet a lot more of the production community here in town. Specifically, the director of photography that I worked with, Kevin Fletcher. I was able to work with him on 2 or 3 different commercial projects, and we really got along very well and worked well together and had our whole situation figured out. And I told him about this project and he got very excited about it. And I would say that after that conversation with him is kind of what kicked it into more of a reality as opposed to something that we weren't sure if it was going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At that moment when you decided to make it, regular fiction, let's say, you had to rewrite everything. How did you go about it? Because I think at the beginning it was supposed to be short film, right?
Yes. Well, the funny thing is that it's not, I wouldn't say there was like one point where I was like, okay, now it's time to rewrite it. It was like a lot of very small changes that eventually demanded a different setting. And so it was a very gradual change.
Sarah, you were producer on the manual, right?
Yes.
When the project shifted and you entered in the project, what was your first move? Did you budget it? Can you walk us through the process of, okay, now it's going to become a movie where we need to cast people, we need to scout locate, we need to make a budget, we need to have a crew. How did you go about that?
I think the meeting with Kevin was sort of like the jumping off point where we really kind of got serious about it. And definitely the budget was the first thing that I thought about and started creating, and working with our other producer, Stacey Lort, who helped me a lot because I hadn't done a lot of like production. My experience was also most in post-production. So yeah, we started working on a budget, and it really was like thinking about whether it was a 3-day shoot or a 4-day shoot, and if we could get everything into 3 days. And then it became like, actually, we can't afford 3 days. We need to make it work in 2 days. So budgeting was the first thing that happened. And then we started doing auditions, and actually Wil helped a lot with that part. And we really just went online and started finding people in town that responded to our audition call and the rate that we paid, which was obviously very lousy. But those were the first 2 things. And then I think scouting for the location was a huge piece of the puzzle that started to make it all come together and gel. But, once we saw the reality of the budget, it turned into a 2-day shoot with like a third day of a skeleton crew with like only 4 people involved on that day, which was the day where we captured most of the scenery where you really feel that you're in this like post-apocalyptic world and not so much inside the forest. So then it was like, how are we going to actually get this money? And so we started looking at crowdfunding, which I've never been a fan of that. Like before this process, I would see friends trying to raise money online and just like, oh, another person asking me for money. But now that we've gone through this process and had to do that, I definitely look at that with a totally different perspective and wanted to as many people as possible just to have good karma for the next time. Because it's so hard to raise a decent budget. And we didn't spend a ton of money, but we raised about half of our budget. And then Wil and I, over the course of time, just accrued debt to pay for the rest of the film, basically. But basically, raising the money was the next piece of the puzzle.
So let me ask you this. When you first made a theoretical budget, how much did you thought you needed to complete this short? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think at first when I put the budget together myself, it was like we wanted to pay everyone like their full rates. And that was just crazy. I don't even know why we even thought that would be possible. But it was like something like 60,000, maybe more. And then when I started working with Stacy, I think we got it down to like 30 something. And then when we decided to move it to a 2-day shoot with like that skeleton crew third day, I think we got it down to about 15, but we did end up spending a little more than that in the end.
I love the fact that you were planning to do a 2-day short film and really looked at it as we're going to pay everybody, which is very rare actually. Even for short films that cost $15,000 or $20,000, most of the time the crew, maybe the DP, but most of the time the crew is not paid. Did you ever consider not paying people?
Well, just to clarify, at least 50% of the people volunteered their time once they found out we were doing this. So we didn't, in fact, we went into it with the intention of trying to pay everyone, but there were a lot of our friends that volunteered their time. The people we had less good relationships with, or, we just couldn't ask that kind of favor. We ended up paying them like reduced rates. So
yeah,
but we
exactly.
wanted to, the point is that we really wanted to pay full rates to everybody at first until we saw the budget going to happen.
It does cost a lot of money still to make films.
I think that part of the reason that we initially felt like it was important is because the fact that our community that we're in it's the commercial production community. So people are used to, it's like their job,
Which is a little bit ironic if you think about it, because you might think that they might be more inclined to use their skills for passion projects, but I understand where you're coming from, yeah, for sure.
Wait, do you mean good versus evil? Is that what you're trying to?
No, not at all. But I have friends who work in the commercial world, and I don't know. It's another debate, I guess. But
it's so true. I have to say that a lot of these people, I feel like we're very excited to work on this project because typically what they're doing all day long is, selling advertising, which I think a lot of people in Portland that we have found they love filmmaking and they love that work, but there's just not a lot of paying gigs that are outside of the advertising realm. So everyone sort of has moved into that place so they can support their families, because this is a big family town. Like people come here to like have children and raise their children, but they all want to do filmmaking. So I think that's why we got a lot of people donating their time.
It's funny because so for the little anecdote for anyone who is listening, Wil and Sara contacted me a couple of months ago, and they are the reason why I started this whole mentorless series of interviews with filmmakers, even though you ended up not being the first one I interviewed. And one of the other filmmaker I interviewed is also from Portland, mind you, and he made a feature film and he's still living there. I don't know, maybe you guys will get in touch afterwards. It's what were the odds, like out of the handful of people I'm interviewing in the whole wide world, 2 of you are in the same town, or 3 of you are in the same town. So
wow.
It is funny. I guess Portland has more to reveal still. So I want to go a little bit further about your crowdfunding campaign. You picked Indiegogo, which I thought was a smart move. The usual tendency is to go with Kickstarter, but in your situation, it made total sense since you didn't hit your goal. If you were on Kickstarter, you would have lost everything. So can you tell us a little bit about how long did you prepare for the campaign and What did you learn about it? Would you do anything differently? I know crowdfunding campaigns are very hard. And as you said, Sarah, there is a big fatigue around the fact that now it's just like the normal thing to do. You're doing a movie, you ask people for money, and it's not like 5 years ago when it was still a little bit exotic, I guess.
What do we do to prepare? Well, I mean, obviously you do all your research on what are the best practices to doing a crowdfunding campaign, and doing a good kind of pitch video is very important. I had put together this little pitch deck that was like a 3-page PDF that had sort of mood imagery and information on the story and what my plan was with it, that I was using to recruit crew members. So I would have coffee with someone and kind of go through and pitch the project to them to try and get them excited about it. And I think what we wanted to do with the Indiegogo video was to recapture that feeling of just a personal conversation with someone to get them excited about the project.
How many of you were, it was just the two of you who dealt with the Kickstarter, see, I even say Kickstarter now, with the crowdfunding campaign?
It was really Wil who did all of that work. I'll have to be honest here.
Yeah, and we had a lot of support. There's a music house in Portland called Marmoset, and they donated some music for our Indiegogo pitch video, which was super nice of them.
Yeah, and they promoted our campaign on their blog, and we had a lot of friends who promoted the campaign. But I just feel like we don't have a lot of friends with a lot of money. So the fact that we got 9,000 or 9.5, that was I just felt super excited about that. So I was impressed that our friends were able to give us that much.
Because the movie is not released yet, so I'm guessing you're still in touch with the people who backed your project, and you still have to send a reward. How do you feel about the amount of time it's taking? Is it something that is on your mind? Or I'm just wondering about, once you do a crowdfunding campaign, there's a bit of responsibility, I guess, that you need to handle on top of making your project.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that's awesome about it is that if you do a crowdfunding campaign, you've then sort of forced yourself to be accountable to people on your project, to people who aren't yourself. At that point, it's like, you've got to make it, which I thought was awesome.
That's a good point.
But yeah, I mean, we have delivered some of the perks, because some of the perks could be delivered before the thing was finished, and there's still more to go, and it's definitely on our mind, and we've got the list, and it's going to happen.
It's interesting because when you're doing the crowdfunding campaign, you're very excited about the project. And then when you have to deliver the perks, right, you've gone through it and you're a little weary, and you're like, it's not the thing that is on top of mind to finishing the film at that point. I remember we were like having to remind each other, like, oh, we have to send people, like a certain amount of people, a certain level of donation we offered to see the first rough cut or something, and comment on it. And at that point we were like, are we ready to like take feedback?
It was like, oh my gosh, will anybody else even understand this without any of the like CGI in it, or without any audio? It was kind of a scary idea to send that out. But
we did, and people were very kind. And then Wil put something into a perk. He said that we would cook people, have them over for dinner and cook them a meal. And I was like, I remember recently being like, why did you promise people that? But then we were making arrangements with people to do that, and it just felt so awesome. Like, I'm so glad that we're going to have people over for dinner and talk about our film in the future, and art and life. And it actually was a brilliant idea, but there was a time when I was like, that was the worst idea, because I'm going to be cooking this meal.
Yeah, that's a very good out of the box idea. I like it. Is there anything you would do retrospectively differently about the campaign, either from the perks, for instance, or I don't know, how you reached out to people, or anything you think, if you were to do another one, something you would change?
Well, I have some friends who have gone onto this other website called Seed and Spark. I haven't done a lot of research on it yet, but it seems like it has worked out really well for them, and seems to be a bit more aimed at independent filmmaking. So I guess what I would do differently is research that more and see if it might be a better fit.
Yes, Hidden Spark is a good platform actually. I'm happy you're mentioning it because I don't hear many people mentioning it, even though I feel it's a platform solely dedicated to filmmaking and to filmmakers. They're trying to build this very healthy network, I guess, of filmmakers. But I have to admit that I don't hear about it as often as I wish I would. So I'm happy you're mentioning it. What I'm wondering right now is that how much time happened between the moment you talked with your DP and you decided, okay, let's make it a short film, to the moment you ran the crowdfunding campaign, to the moment you shot the actual film? Was it over a year?
I think it was about 9 months total. Like you talked to Kevin in like early 2016, like around spring, and then we did the crowdfunding campaign like in the summertime, and then we shot October 8th of last year. So it's been just a little over a year since we shot. We were in post production for a while, since it was really just Will working on it in post production. And then our composer.
And you have a big VFX sequence. I mean, I think we should maybe add that it's not your family dinner short film. It's like you post-production will take some time for sure. So what I'm wondering is that you're making this short film. I'm guessing you're developing a strategy about distribution, probably sending it to film festivals. I mean, I would like to hear about that. Basically, you just finished the film. I guess you're going to release it in a few months or something like that?
Initially, our idea was to just send it to festivals and do a festival run and then release it online. And so there's this thing that for a short film, it's a half an hour long film, so it's a medium length film. But there was something that I wasn't aware of, is that festivals don't necessarily like to program. Like, you're more likely to get into a festival with a 10-minute film than with a half an hour film, just because they have so many slots to fill. And yeah, it's just easier to fit something like that in. And I wasn't aware of that. And I don't think that if I was aware of it, it would have changed anything, because I think the most important thing is obviously to have the film be the right length to tell the story that you want to tell. And we weren't necessarily making this film just to go to festivals. We were making this film to tell a story to people. When we found out about that, that was like, okay, so do we do festivals? And we've actually gotten into 2 festivals already, and we're doing the festival run. We're still waiting to hear back on a lot of them. But as far as other filmmakers I've spoken to, it seems like we're being accepted at a little better than sort of the average festival acceptance rate, which is good to hear, because I think it speaks to the quality of the film.
But I think we decided to release the film online sooner, because we realized that why wait? People, I think, wait because of their premiere, or some festivals. It might hurt their chances of getting into a festival because they're online. Or anyway, it just felt like, we don't really know why these people choose you or don't choose you. Like, if the length of the film is already working against us, then why are we waiting anyway? We want to share the story. We didn't make the story to just make it hard to see, or we didn't make this story so that no one could see it. And so why not just release it? And that's why we've kind of shifted our strategy.
So when you realize that the length of the movie might play against it, which is true, which is true. You don't need me to confirm it, but that's something that I've definitely heard people say many, many times, and which makes sense as well if you think about it. Did you consider shortening it?
I did consider it. I actually tried to, and it just didn't work. It's the wrong length for,
You
the
took
story.
5 minutes out, didn't you? Or 3 minutes?
Well, I tried to get it down to 20 minutes, and I'm an editor, so that's what I do, but it just didn't work. And I can tell when a story works or doesn't work. And
to me, the film, part of what takes so long is that we're really trying to establish that this is a big, vast, empty world that James is living in. And it's important that you see these shots of various topographies and places that he's going to be searching. And so that's kind of what takes time. There's maybe not a lot of dialogue in those parts, but I feel like they're visually interesting, and you sort of need that to grasp the loneliness, the isolation of him being sort of alone in that world with this machine character. And I just don't feel like we could cut more of that out.
I just have a question. It was my understanding, but maybe I misunderstood when you were on the video of the crowdfunding campaign that it was not meant to be a medium length film. Did you always know it was going to be 30 minutes, or did it expand as you went into post-production?
It definitely expanded. And I can tell you how that happened. One thing that I did when I was preparing the actors for their roles was I wrote a 15-page long sort of sacred text, which was supposed to be a piece of the content of the actual manual device to familiarize them with what that religion might have in it and some of the stories that might run through and things like that. And when we did the first cut of the film, it felt like there was a huge part of it that was missing. And we ended up putting in voiceover from the actual manual sacred text that was initially only for the actors' benefit, but it rounded out the story and made it pretty unique, I think.
Interesting. So this was a post-production twist, I guess.
It was a post-production story change, basically.
It's almost crazy to me that we felt like we could get away with not having more of that text in there at this point. But anyway, hindsight is 20/20, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you spend a good deal of time on your own wheel doing the post-production. Is that you did everything in post-production? Is that correct?
Mostly, yeah. I had my friend Philip McGuigan helped me set the project up. He kind of did some assistant editing on it for me. And then I did have a day of help from another friend, Andrew Barrick, who did some rotoscoping on one shot. So we had a costume malfunction in one scene where the neck of the robot had popped out, but it was her best performance, and it was beyond my skill level to composite the neck back into the costume. And so we ended up hiring a professional compositor to do that aspect of that scene for us. His name was Dan Short, and he did a great job. But other than that, yeah, I did it all myself, nights and weekends when I wasn't working.
I've seen that you got some coverage. You made a trailer, I think that was covered on Slash, and you got an interview also while you were doing the Indiegogo campaign or afterward. I don't quite remember. Did it happen out of luck? You just sent a couple of emails, or did you develop a strategy to raise awareness? And you reached out to me, for instance, so I'm guessing you were kind of mindful about how to make people aware about your work?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out interesting ways of sort of promoting this film. The Slash film coverage took us by surprise. That we didn't reach out to them. They just covered it, which was pretty cool.
Did you know how they found you?
Yeah, I think that a friend of ours is a regular contributor to that site and wrote to the guy who does it and was like, "Hey, check this out."
But we didn't know that until afterwards, right?
Yeah, we didn't know that he had done that.
That was really nice of him.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But it's really like, it just feels like you have to, in this day and age with everything being on the internet, I think that there is this like perception that you're going to put something online and it might like blow up and suddenly go viral. But that's not really how it happens. You have to really be proactive and have agency over your plan and just be kind of brainstorming ideas on how to target people who might be interested in the type of story that you're telling and, reach out to them because they, the internet is a very big place.
It is, which is why I'm interested, because personally, I feel that where a lot of people, and probably myself included, leave the game, and that's where a lot of projects die, is when it comes to distribution, whether for film festivals or for, press, if we can talk about press when it comes to online. But I am interested in hearing how did you brainstorm about it, and even if you have a budget for film festivals, because that costs some money and it takes a lot of time as well.
Yeah. I think that because we dedicated so much time and so much of our own money into this project, even though it's almost like playing the lottery with some of these festivals like Sundance or South by Southwest or whatever, you just feel like you have to submit to those festivals just because you've already gone through so much, you just have to do it. But then other than that, we have had a strategy of targeting festivals that had a medium length category or that were focused on science fiction or post-apocalyptic screening, things like that.
Or horror.
Or horror. Yeah, it's funny because it seems like we are sort of fitting into a weird horror. I think it's called neo-horror. It's somehow fitting into that in some places.
Yeah, but at first, like with the festivals, we just literally our strategy was to just go online and find as many festivals as we thought were decent festivals based on their website, based on, reviews. So it wasn't really a great strategy. But when we started finding out about the medium length issue and the difficulties with that, we started being a little more targeted and decided that we couldn't just send it to every like amazing festival we found online. We have invested a lot in the festival piece of this, but we just decided it was worth it because we've invested so much that we have to kind of keep going.
Follow through.
Yeah. Did you only apply to American film festivals or did you also apply to international film festivals?
We've definitely applied to international festivals as well. I don't think country really mattered to us. We had a festival called the Leuven Film Festival, which is in Belgium. They reached out to us after seeing the trailer and gave us a waiver. So that was fun to be able to submit to them.
Did you send them the trailer or did they see the trailer and reached out saying you should apply to the film festival?
Our trailer got featured on Film Shortage, which is like a film website. And I think that we got a lot of views from that. And I think that's how that festival director found it.
And you said you got selected already into 2 film festivals. I'm not sure you can say which one yet, but are those festivals you're planning to attend? Like, do you have budget and time for this type of events?
Well, it actually already played at the Rome International Film Festival in Rome, Georgia. And then it's playing in 2 weeks in Tampa Bay at the Tampa Bay Underground Film Festival. And that's our hometown, so I'm actually going to go there and make it into a family trip, see my parents and stuff. So I will be attending that.
So we're justifying that cost because it's sort of like, there's other reasons to go. And then we got nominated for some awards, so it seems worth it. But it's definitely a really agonizing decision when you get in because the Rome, Georgia Film Festival is like right outside of Atlanta. It's a really beautiful film festival, and it just seemed really like nicely curated, and it's been going on for a while, and we really wanted to do that, but financially it's really hard. So we have a 3-year-old, and when you have a child, it all changes what you can spend your money on and what you can't. So it's hard. I don't know if like after this, if we would be able to, unless it was like a really prestigious festival, if we would spend the money.
Do you know how many festivals you applied to?
I think we applied to about 60.
That many? Wow.
And we're still waiting to hear back on like 45 of those.
Yeah, so there's still plenty of time. Anything can happen, basically. But you're still... So let me get that right. You applied, you're waiting for 45, let's say, film festival answers. I know some of them must require that you don't put the film online, no?
Not very many.
Ah, okay.
A lot of them will have requirements that it hasn't shown in their town, theatrically. But there's not a lot of festivals that have premiere requirements. So they might have them for feature films, but not necessarily short films.
Yeah, some of these like rules that everyone sort of still lives by, like once premiere requirements and those sorts of things are not necessarily as prevalent as we think anymore with at least when the film festivals that we've looked into. When we release our film online, we are planning to charge a small fee for it, like $1 or $2, so that it's not completely accessible, which we are thinking might help with festivals. Just thinking like, not having a reason to play it because it's, all over the internet or something. Does that make sense? I don't know if I said that.
It does. Actually, I want to ask you more about that. But before that, just one last thing about the festival. How did you make your research and application? Is there any programs, websites you used?
Yeah. The only time we used Without a Box is when we absolutely had to, because it is such a bad program. It is such a bad website. But there's some festivals that only allow you to submit through that, but it's not a lot. Mostly I used Film Freeway, which has much better searching tools. People can filmmakers can write reviews on the festivals. It's designed much better. It's just overall a much better experience and easier to keep track of things, and highly recommended by me.
Okay. That's good because I never use them, but without a box is not it's not great. So now I'm interested in talking about the online distribution strategy, and since you mentioned the possibility of charging, tell me a little bit more about what you have in mind. Maybe it will change, but what you have in mind, or maybe it won't change, and when it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think we haven't really nailed down our release date yet, just because we've started getting more traction with the festival circuit, and so I think we want to see where this leads before we release. So that's a little fluid, but our plan right now is once we are done with everything we want to do with festivals, to go and release it on Vimeo so that people can rent it for like $1 or buy it for $2, or more like pricing it like a television show, which is more in line with, I think, how long it is and the journey that you go through in terms of the story. And the point of that is not necessarily to make money, because I don't think there's any way we're going to recoup what we've spent on it. I think it's, for both of us, it's more about perceived value of the product. If you just throw something up on YouTube, people are less likely to give it the amount of time that I think that our story needs. Like this half an hour story, I want people to have the experience, not sit at their work desk watching a YouTube video. I don't think that that's the right experience for the story. And so that is the thinking behind why we're going to have this little paywall in front of our story.
So if you say paywall, you say much more work for you to raise awareness. Is that something like, are you developing a strategy to make people aware of the short film? I mean, besides talking to me right now.
Well, this is part of the strategy. We've been, obviously festivals are a part of that strategy too. We put together a whole series of things. Probably the most important part is to identify who our core audience is. And we identify that, and then you have to figure out where do those people go online, because we're mainly just doing this online, and just finding how do you get the word out in those areas. And so part of that is advanced reviews. We've already had, I think, 3 different reviewers that we've sent screeners to, and they've written out reviews and doing interviews on different podcasts that are related to the genres, and then
our social media,
getting our social media under control. Where we've actually hired a guy, who's going to start kicking our social media into high gear.
Yeah, we met this guy, Brian, who is going to start helping us. He's got a whole plan in place for our social media. So obviously that's a huge part of it. I don't know. Maybe we haven't mentioned it till now because it seems so obvious. But, since people will be listening who might be taking advice from this, like the more robust your social media plan, the better. And I would say that we've probably started late in that process. Like, we've been kind of personally posting on social media, but he's going to help us really like strategically with the rhythm of our posts, the type of posts we do, and just making sure that the cadence feels right. Like we're posting the right mix of like behind the scenes versus stills versus little clips that we were planning to do of the text versus like, interviews like this or like any kind of press that we get. So having someone that is really like savvy with social media, I guess we all feel like we're savvy, but there are people out there, they're typically younger. They really know social media in a way that just better than me. So
that's a very good point, and that's very interesting because it's the first time I'm hearing about it. Usually I hear about this type of strategy, of having someone dealing with this type of stuff, typically during crowdfunding campaigns. And I love the fact that you guys are actually going to leverage this tool for the distribution, which I find great. If you know already, I would love to know, when you mean socials, which platform have you selected? Are you going for a page, Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, or less? And also, is it for the manual or is it for Wil? Is it just for the project of this movie particularly, or is it more for a career type of, long game type of social media?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I think it's just for this film. We have a Facebook page, Instagram are probably the 2 main ones, and then we're also setting up Twitter.
But I think we, obviously, like we want to promote this film, and at this point, like we don't necessarily have like dreams and goals that this film is going to make us money, but what this film can do is help us with people who might be interested in donating to our next project. And I think that's really the long game that I'm thinking of, is like the next project. Like, I really do want to pay people, maybe not their full rates, but at least like I want everyone to be paid. Like, like we said, at least 50% donated their time. I really want to, have a decent budget, work with our friends again. And this sort of gives us, hopefully this is like basically credential. This film is like our credentials. Like, can you put something together that is beautiful and tells a compelling story? And can you hire the right people and find the right locations? And can you promote it? And are you going to follow through and all those things? And sort of this film is basically the evidence of that, right? So that's the long game, in my opinion, is like it sort of does promote us as filmmakers. So I hope that that's what we achieve from all of this work.
Yeah, I think that as a filmmaker, every project is leading to the next,
I mean, I definitely think that the main outcome of a particular project should be to be able to do the next project, and anything else is bonus, basically. Okay, a couple of more questions about the social media distribution, long game type of strategy. Do you have a website? Are you planning to have a website?
We have a website up right now. It is themanualfilm.com.
So this is the place where people can go to find out whenever the movie will be out or where it's playing, if it got into festival, or to find your socials, right?
That's right. Yeah, we have the trailer up there, all the screenings. There's also, people can see all the press we've gotten so far.
It's like a newsletter sign up.
Yeah, you can sign up to be notified. You put your city in, and then if it plays near you, we'll send out an email.
And for the social media, I'm just intrigued, and I don't know if you have the answer already, but when are you starting to kick off the socials, and how long, what's the plan? Like, how long do you decide for a short film or for a feature film? It would be the same question, I guess. How long do you plan on sustaining those accounts on a very regular basis?
So the guy that is going to be running our social media, Brian Namus, what he did was he asked us to give him all of the content that he would have to work with. And based off of that, he's going to decide like when to start it. Because I think the point is that you want to be posting enough to keep it consistent and keep people interested. Yeah. And so you figure out how much you have to post, and then when do you want to do the release? Like, what do you want the post to lead up to? Mm-hmm. And then you want to sustain a little bit after that.
Right.
So he's still working on that. So I can't tell you exactly how long it is, but I know that it's based on what you have to work with.
The amount of content we've given him, yeah.
I guess it also depends on when you're going to, because this is all about the online launch, right? So if you're going to launch it in 4 months, you have 4 more months or 3 more months, let's say, to build, to create content to give him or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Since we're talking about this, I wanted to mention that something that I think we made a mistake on with this film is we didn't have an on-set photographer taking behind-the-scenes stills and all of that. And that is something that can help you very much with the social media
or will help.
Promotion.
I don't know if it's definitely will help you, because we've gotten so much more reaction on social media to behind-the-scenes shots. Like, people are just so much more interested, and everybody wants to know or see like what it takes to make a story. So yeah. That's really huge. And even if you just have a PA assigned to doing that, like someone that's already helping with other stuff, but it's top of mind for them to be taking behind the scenes photos. I mean, we were able to pool a lot of photos because people were taking photos, but we probably would have gotten more and better shots had someone been thinking about that.
That's also a very good point. And I actually think that in an ideal world, we would always have almost a double budget, one for the actual film and another one for a making of crew. And I think it would be so much easier to even recoup, because somehow it's easier to sell and make money out of making of than the actual project that might work or might not work. And some people might like it and some people might not like it, but everybody wants to know how you make it. So since we're at that point, and it's excellent because that's pretty much one of the closing questions that I have for you guys. It's like, if you were doing the manual tomorrow, starting from the moment you decide to make it a short film, what are the things you would do differently besides having a set photographer?
You want me to take this one?
Let me think on it while Sarah's talking.
You know, every time you do a project, there's things you would do differently. I think Go ahead.
So I think the most obvious thing is that I wish we'd had more money for every aspect of it. Mm-hmm. Like specifically, I wish that we had been able to spend a little bit. I mean, so here's one thing that happened was our the crew that designed and built the robot costume, they basically did not have enough money to work with. And because of that, I didn't see the final finished version, like fully final finished version, until the day of shooting. I had been working with them iteratively and along the whole way, but I didn't see the final thing. I was prepared to have a fully CGI robot if it showed up and it wasn't going to cut it. Thankfully, they did an amazing job. I think they were up for 17 hours the night before the shoot, putting the finishing touches on this thing, and it was an amazing costume, but it could have gone very wrong. And
yeah.
So, and that was due to them not having enough money to put the time into it that they should have. And I think that there's just aspects of the film that could have gone wrong easily because there wasn't enough money. I mean, we were kind of not spending money whenever we could because of it's an ambitious project, and so that's part of it. So, the big obvious thing is like, oh, I wish we'd had more money.
I think this might seem silly, but people always say when you're not paying people, you need to feed them well. And that is so true. And we did feed people really well. But I do think if you can try to get someone to just be dedicated to food, it goes a long, long way. And crew really appreciates it. I mean, our second day of shooting, it rained the entire day. It was like awesome and terrible at the same time because we got these like very dramatic shots that I think if the rain hadn't been, pouring down on us the way that it was, they wouldn't have felt so intense and like.
Well, I wanted to get a rain truck, but we couldn't afford it, and then it ended up.
Nature took care of you.
I was just like, people were desperate to get out of the rain. It was really cold and really rainy, and if I think just having contingencies to make people more comfortable. Like at the last minute, I was buying umbrellas and things, but like people were pretty cold and miserable that day. We did end up like cutting early and not getting every shot because Wil had decided in his mind that he didn't need certain shots we had planned for. But I think like when you just making sure that you have like tents and you have like places for people to go and be warm when things like that happen. This is an obvious thing, and I think in the commercial production world, but they have big budgets. And when you're working in short films, like I think a lot of skimping happens around like people's comfort, your crew and your cast comfort, and you just can't do that because when people become demotivated and when the morale goes down, it really shifts the energy. It shifts everyone's energy. And we did take care of people enough that I think everybody were happy, but everybody was definitely sighed a huge sigh of relief when we, instead of shooting till 10 p.m., we shot until like 7. Everyone was very happy because it was already so dark. But then the sun went down and it was like, it felt like death out there.
I love once again that you're raising this point because those are the little details that are going to kill a set. And especially when people are not paid. When it's your job and you're paid for it, you shut up and you just do it. But when you're not doing it because of the money and you're doing it because of passion or because you believe in it or because you're just, they're your friends, but then it's also their day off and they're tired. And I do think that stomach is a very strategic place to hit right if you want people. I remember a filmmaker saying, never budget for just pizza and chips and Coke. That's, the cliche saying, oh, we'll just buy pizza and people will be happy. No, they won't. You need to feed them very well. And that's actually something people who don't have budget should take out of this episode, I feel. I just have one last question with you guys. We talked about that this project is basically, hopefully, the first step for the next project. And so my question is, you've been working on this for the last 4 years. Aside from having a kid and having full-time jobs, did you have time or are you already working on a new project? And if so, what is it?
We're both trying to develop our own feature scripts. And then we're going to swap them and edit each other's and kind of figure out what our next project is after that. But I'm about halfway through my first draft, and it's going to be similar in tone, I think, to this short film. But yeah, I think we want to do a feature next.
Sarah, you're also writing a feature?
I would say that I am outlining my feature at this point. I'm much slower than Wil is, but yes, I'm starting to craft a story, and Wil's gotten a lot further than I am because he's a machine that, despite having a full-time job and a child, is able to stay up like till 3 a.m. working, and I don't have that kind of stamina, But yeah, the intention is that we'll be done writing in a couple months, and then we'll be able to swap and decide which one is the best one for our next project. But
yeah,
cool. So basically, you're going for feature right now. That's pretty. I love it. It's very ambitious. It's very good. I hope I will still be around to hear about how this one is going. I want to thank you very much for your time and your generosity. It was a real pleasure to talking with you two.
Thank you, Nathalie. This was such a fun conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, guys. It was my pleasure. This episode was produced and edited by me, Nathalie Sejean. The music was created by French artist Soul of Bear. You can discover their techno universe on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Soul of Bear. You can find all the previous episodes on mentorless.com/podcast, on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on Stitcher, and everywhere else. It's very important for me to read your comments, so don't hesitate to share them on iTunes, possibly with a lot of stars, or to tag me on Instagram and Twitter. I am @mentorless. I cannot wait to read you. If you have a story about a creative project that taught you a lot and you'd like to share, you can submit it. Go to mentorless.com/podcast. At the end of the page, there is a form you can fill up to submit your story. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end. I'll see you in 2 weeks for our next episode.